Hello and welcome back to What Are You Thinking podcast. Today is going to be incredible. And so get ready. This is going to be a phenomenal interview about one of the single most interesting people in all of New York City. There's no hyperbole, no exaggeration on that. Dimas Salaberrios, thank you very much. That's a mouthful right there, Salaberrios.
I know. Imagine having people spell that and say it in school.
Do you have some Hispanic background?
Yes, I'm an Afro-Latino.
Afro-Latino.
Father's from Puerto Rico. My mother traces from Charleston, South Carolina, all the way to Ethiopia.
Wow.
We're one of the few that know our history all the way. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for being here. I sincerely want to introduce you to our audience today because this man is incredibly interesting. First off, he's married to Tiffany and they have 3 daughters.
Yep.
How much money do you need to take care of 3 daughters? I mean, I have 2. I have twin girls and wow. Anyway, we love them though. They're little divas in training, sort of, not really. But you have a great family. And also what's fascinating is that Dimas is a faith leader in New York City. People look to him. He is President Emeritus of the Concerts of Prayer for all of Greater New York. He's involved in anytime there's a pastor's gathering, he's there. He's one of the leaders. And he is a film producer, along with being a faith leader. You founded a church, Infinity Bible Church, I believe it is, in the Bronx. Yeah. And he's had a great run being the pastor there. The church is still going strong today. And you've been on the front lines of any disasters, several disasters. I know what that is to come to New York City after 9/11. I was here in that moment, and there were very few people coming into the city after 9/11. And you went into the Haiti earthquake, you went into the shootings in Charleston, in Chicago, in New York. You've been on the front line. I deeply admire that while everybody is leaving, you're going in and you're making a massive difference.
I also want to say thank you for coming to New York, because I remember when you came, I went to one of your services at the Lambs Theater and was absolutely blown away. And as New Yorkers, we're happy for more people to come, bringing faith and hope like what you did and your incredible team back there. I remember one of them, he used to do the basketball with his eyes with his eyes closed, and I mean there was just so many things. It was just for our city. If no one's ever said it, thank you, all in every nation. Thank you for being here, Ron, and for your team.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it, Dimas, and I'm really sorry that my wife Lynette couldn't be here today. She's the better half, and she was one of those early people as well. And one of the values that we had was just let's have a good time, joy.
Wow.
That joy, and joy is a gift from God.
It is.
That is, in spite of the tragedy, you have been able to walk in joy and peace as well. So let's go back to your upbringing in this beautiful neighborhood in Queens, and
yes,
tell us about that.
So I grew up in Cambria Heights, Queens. That's the neighborhood of LL Cool J, Run DMC, and Russell Simmons, and many, many hip hop artists. And I grew up around solid families. I mean, my house on the block was the only house that experienced a divorce. Every other house had the father and mother and the kids. And I remember my mother was a school teacher, or eventually became a principal. And once in a while, with hard times, she'd send me with a little note to knock on somebody's door, to give them a note to get to ask for money to make sure that we got through to her next check. And in this beautiful working upper middle class community, had the most middle class African American population in the nation, and lo and behold, a drug named crack came through the neighborhood. And the neighborhood was changing, and the parents didn't know it. So I remember I went to a predominantly all-white middle school. And while I was at this middle school in Bayside, Queens, which is a very affluent area, and my parents wanted me to get the best education, but they had no idea even crack was impacting those communities. And someone, one of my friends invited me into a bathroom, pulled out a bag of drugs. It wasn't crack at the time. He stole it from his brother. And he said, would you help me sell it? And I was like, wow, I just saw this movie. That's why movies are so dear to me. I had just finished watching the movie Scarface, and I never saw, I didn't know drugs was like an empire. And I remember seeing that movie, and I had this evil dream in my head saying, man, I want to be the biggest drug dealer in New York City.
This is before you did drugs.
This is before, yeah.
And so you viewed it maybe like a business or something like that?
Yeah. I never was a big drug user. I was always a drug dealer. So I was not like a big addict character. I think I only got high for about 6 months, but I sold drugs for like 13, 14 years of my life. So this is not a drug addict story. This is a drug dealing story. So I sold those drugs with him. We sold it quickly in the neighborhood. Then another girl gave us a pound of marijuana. We sold that. And then I started to realize the big money was in the crack. All the crack dealers drove BMWs. I know a kid personally. He was 11 years old and he had a Volvo. And
could he drive?
A big chain. Yeah, he was little and he was driving it and he was getting around. He literally was driving it to middle school. I said, that's the life I want to live. And my parents, they tried their best. They were saying, wait till college. We're going to get you a car. Everything's going to work out. But around me, I was seeing that fast life in front of me and it drew me right in.
Wow.
Yeah.
So everything like that eventually gets exposed?
Yes.
And at a certain point, you got caught?
Yes.
Which brings us to that next phase. You ended up in Rikers.
Oh, by far in the 1990s, in the 80s and 90s, no place was more violent than Rikers Island. Rikers Island was, and they were doing slashings in there.
Well, still are.
And still are. Yeah.
A lot of slashings.
You saw when I was in there, almost everybody had a big slice down their face from a razor. And I can tell you it was God's grace that I don't have that.
Look at that beautiful face right there. It was preserved.
I was touched, but it was the mercy of the Lord. And but like you said, it started, my father was a captain of correction at Rikers Island.
Oh my
So
goodness.
this was a total
Terrible.
embarrassment. Yeah. And he was a legend. Like I talk to people today, they're like, Captain Dimas Salaberrios, he was one of the greatest captains ever. So here's his son getting in trouble. I was being picked up on a regular, and my mother was in my defense. I say, Ma, they just ran up on the block, found the drugs, put it on me. And she kept getting these paid lawyers, and I was getting over. And then one judge just said, enough is enough. This guy's got to go.
Wow.
I beat 13 arrests.
Oh my goodness.
So the 14th time, he was like, he's staying behind bars.
So how old were you when you went to Rikers?
The first time, you were only allowed in Rikers at age 16. And I lied at age 15 because when you go to Rikers, you don't have to call home. You could be released on your own reconnaissance. What's it called? You were released on your own. I forgot the legal term they call it. And so I lied and said I was 15. And quickly I knew I was over my head when I was in there, jammed in a cell with 50 guys, and they were real big. And we had to go to the shower. My heart was pounding. I think, man, I took the fastest shower I ever took in my life. I was there like, Lord, help me, Jesus. Pull up my pants, threw a towel on. I was like, I'm good. They were like, yo. I was like, I'm good, man. I'm right over. I walked out of that place. Man, it was a shock. And the drug dealers I worked for, they bailed me out. But they said, which was really profound. I believe God is in our whole story when you have a call on your life. And the drug dealer said, we want to let you sit there for 5 days just to think about what was going on. I'm like, think about, you had the money. Why you just bail me out? They're like, I don't know why. We just said, let them hang for 5 days, get a little tougher.
Wow.
And I came out, I quit that team and went and worked for myself. And
that was it.
Yeah, I worked for myself, still in the drug world, but I didn't want to be under any bosses anymore. And I got sentenced to a year, and I had 2 choices. They said, you can go upstate to hard prison, or you could do a military program for 6 months called Shock, because I had no violent crime. I said, give me that military program. I jumped in there and I loved it. I mean, getting up, running, push-ups, sit-ups. When I tell you that, I fit in like a glove. But at that time, there was a law that you couldn't be in the military if you had a felony. So I was released back to the streets and very quickly back to selling drugs again.
So obviously something happened to you that was a radical in nature. Something happened to you, obviously. You're not selling drugs anymore. You're not messed up. You're not out of your mind. You've changed.
Yes.
What happened? What happened? There, and you have a book, and we'll mention that.
I'll tell you the first thing that happened. I thought I was smarter than everybody else. Most good criminals are like that. You know, you think you can beat the system. So I didn't realize when I was on parole, every time I was turning urine, because I was handling the drugs, it was going into my pores. And my urine was coming out with cocaine in it, even though I wasn't using cocaine. So I go to see my parole officer, and she asked me, how are you doing? And I thought I was smart because I was getting a GED. I said, well, I'm getting my GED. As soon as I finish, I'm going into college. I said, I'm taking care of business. Everything is great. Next thing you know, these officers come running in the room. They handcuffed me, put me on the table. They said, are you ready to go to jail? I said, oh my gosh, so what's going on? So they sat me in a chair, handcuffed with my arms behind me. And the lady said, I'll be right back. She walked out to do the paperwork because they were going to send me to jail. So I started thinking about everybody I fought in jail, which we didn't get into, but I was a fighter. So I fought this guy, I fought that guy, and I knew I had enemies all over the prison system. And next thing you know, while I was sitting in my chair, I slipped the cuffs down. I slipped them in front of me. I stepped over one foot and the other, and the cuffs were in my hands, were in front of me, like right by my chest. And I didn't even know I could do that. I knew I was flexible, but I didn't know I could do that. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And when she walked in, she didn't notice. She went behind a big table, said, are you ready to go to jail? I said, no, I'm not. And I started running. And I opened the door to a room of officers, and I ran past them all.
Unbelievable.
I was on the 5th floor in the building. I got to the staircase, and one of them was like, I could tell like he was almost reaching me. This is stuff you can do when you're young. I can't do it anymore. I just dived down the stairs and just rolled. Boom, got to the bottom, got up, and I dived again down another flight, rolled, got up, and before I knew it, I made it out into the street. And that was the first time I think I praised God, because I went to the street. I said, praise God. And I'm running, telling people, get out of my way, get out of my way. And the cops were chasing me. They said, reportedly, almost half the building, about 50 cops were chasing after me. I ran inside a mall. I dived underneath a table, and the cops were running into the mall. And they must have saw somebody, because they was like, there he is, there. And I could hear them running. And I was under this table like this, shaking. And
wait,
one guy
a table
saw
in the
me.
mall? A table was just sitting out there?
It was a barber shop. As soon as you go in the mall, it was like a barber shop. And I dived under this table in the barber shop. And while I was in there, one of the guys saw me, and he pulled me into the room, closed the door, and then I still had the cuffs on, and I knew one of the barbers from my school. So I said, look, I said, yo, he said, cops are everywhere. They got this whole place surrounded. I said, call my friend. His name was Oz, weird name. I said, call Oz, So Oz shows up. This is the era, you gotta remember, the big jewelry. So he said, I know what to do. Oz was smart. He went to one of the jewelry stores and got a metal cutter, came back, snapped my cuffs. And he said, what do we do now? So I told him, I said, put me in the barber's chair. He said, are you crazy everywhere? I said, listen, man, they looking for somebody cuffed like this, like this. I said, just let me wear your shirt, throw the shirt out. You put me in the barber's chair with the cloth on and just shave me crazy, like make me bald. They won't be able to know. And they were cutting my hair while the cops walked in. And I was like, oh man, the Knicks are losing. I'm so sick of the Knicks. And they were just cutting my hair. And I never turned around. And the cops just walked out. And then one of the barbers said, I'm gonna get my car. He pulled around and he hit the horn. And I walked like I was short. And I jumped in the car and got away. And very quickly, I knew at that point, if I stayed in New York, I was gonna get caught. And to jump the story just a little forward, they surrounded the area where my girlfriend lived to try to catch me. And I had to dress like a woman, even though that's not my lifestyle. But I put on a dress, I put on a wig, and I put on lipstick, and I got in the car, and I drove out of the checkpoint. And then I made my way on the train with drugs strapped all over my body to your hometown, to the Amtrak stop at Greensboro, North
Carolina. By the way,
I probably walked right by you.
In case anyone wants to know, I had nothing to do with this guy.
I'll tell you like this. I was the tallest girl in New York City for at least an hour and a half. Nobody was taller than me.
This is the Mrs. Doubtfire, the movie.
That is exactly
Robin
what it
Williams
was.
All.
And it was. I felt a lot of compassion on that train for people that had lifestyle. Because this one guy kept staring at me, and he was like, psst. He was like, yo, what are you doing? I was like, only if you knew, brother. I'm an escapee. And got to North Carolina and very quickly took over the drug operations in Winston-Salem and got into a lot of drug wars. 30 of my friends were killed. And Winston-Salem became the murder capital of the United States for about 4 months. The killings were unreal. And those were a lot of my friends that were dying. And I was shot at and then, yeah, I'll pause there, or I can go into the conversion where.
Well, I think you should. So again, like something happened to you.
Yes.
You're not that guy anymore.
Yes.
So what were you thinking?
At that time, I was scared. I was nervous. I couldn't stop selling drugs. At that time, I felt like there was no going back. I was in too far. And my mother...
Isn't that the way it is for a lot of people? They think, I'm in this too far.
You think there's no way out.
And there's no way out, right.
Because I had no reference of a miracle, like miracles could work,
Did you go to church? Did you have a church background?
I went to a very mean church.
A mean church.
When I was a kid.
That's unfortunate.
It was like, it was a church in Harlem and nobody smiled. I mean, I know now the history of all the stuff people were going through back then. But as a kid, I was like, I liked church. I told my mother one time, I said, Ma, I said, you should put your whole personal offering. So just give it all to God.
You told her that, your mother?
She elbowed me, shut up. I was on fire, man.
How old were you then?
I was probably like 6 years old, 7 years
so
old.
It's funny how a lot of people have something like that in them.
Yeah.
And then years later, they go through all this hardship. So, like meeting God through Jesus, meeting God and having God come into you. I mean, the radical change and transformation. How did that happen to you?
So I had a power conversion, okay? In the South, where you were born, there was a black witchcraft thing called roots. I'm sure you probably had to hear about it. I don't know if you ever prayed that off of somebody, but that was big in the South, and it exists. And this young lady came around who was known as a witch, and she was dating my competition, which was another drug dealer. And she was a powerful woman in witchcraft. So she was so powerful in darkness that everybody was blowing it off. Oh, they all call her a witch, but that's my girlfriend. Every girl that hung out with her ended up in a mental institution.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would be standing somewhere and I would feel darkness almost like permeating me, and I would turn around and I would see her in a car staring at me, and I would just leave. I had no power. I had no God. I had no help. I had nothing. I just would flee. That was my thing. When I see her, take off running, because she can put the whammy on you.
So you've been running a lot in your life.
My nickname was the Running Man.
My goodness.
I mean, that's what they call. One guy called me on the street.
I mean, I have vivid images now of you breaking free in the police department. I mean, going down 5. I don't know how a man would roll and down those kind of hard.
You got those rubber
steps.
bones when you're like 16, 17. I was fit too. I was like, you remember I told you I did that military thing. So I was so solid. I could drop and do 100 push-ups. I could run 10 miles at the drop of a dime. You know, I could do 6 now, but at 10, like, it was nothing. So being that fit, I was like a Terminator for the work of the evil one, you know. And so this is how it happened. I got in a car and I'm driving towards North Carolina. I'm driving towards New York because I was coming to pick up some drugs. I said, I've been free all this time. It's like 5 years now. I didn't kill anybody. They're not looking for me like that. So I'm in the car and I'm asleep. And I want to tell you, this is the truth. This is a car I've never been in my life. This is a car with black tints. This is a car that nobody knew about. And I'm on the highway and I had a driver and the horn kept going, and the driver's like, yo, who is this? Like, yo, somebody keeps honking us. They're following us. Do you know this person? I rolled down the window and it was that witch.
Oh my goodness.
She wasn't on a broomstick. She was in a green Honda Accord. I got to New York City. Now, you know how big New York is. You can not see someone your whole life in New York. It's just so many people. I'm walking down the streets of New York. She pops out of nowhere, grabs my hand, does some kind of twist on my hand, and I completely lost my mind. I saw things in shades of red. I was fear-bound. I was shaking. I was scared. I lost complete control. My team picked up the drugs. We're driving back to North Carolina. I get to my house, 100% demonic possession. I was searching the house to find a gun to blow my head off. But I was in my right mind inside of my body, but I had no control of my body. This is Emily Rose. This is the exorcism. This is the real deal. My body was moving and I was like a mouse inside of this body saying, no, stop. And I'm tearing up the house looking for the gun. And finally, I turned over something. The gun fell. My friend grabbed it, hid the gun and locked the door. I couldn't get in. I went over the kitchen sink and I started smashing the dishes. And that's how I got all these scar marks all on my hands. I was smashing the dishes. Blood was flying everywhere. And I ran out of the house, ran into somebody's house I don't know, ran through their house and out their back door, trailed blood there. I went to a club. My friends tried to help me. They were like, you got to go to a club. That's what people do. You get a few drinks in you, you're going to be all right. You're going to calm down. Next thing you know, I'm in the club. I tackle a guy. I'm smashing his head into the cement floor of the club. I go down and I disformed his face. I bit a chunk of his face out, spit the meat skin from his face on the floor. I'm dripping with blood. I am lost out of my mind, Ron.
Now, this is really, truly, I'll have to say that I've been around stories, but I've never heard anything quite like this. I mean, honestly, I thought Mike Tyson was a unique story, unique when he bit in somebody's ear. Now, this is okay. We've crossed over this, so we might as well call it what it is: demonic.
This is
you were demonized.
I was demonized,
and
something was living in me. Very dark.
So we can go back into the Bible and other books and read stories of demons.
Yes.
And never know that still exists today.
Yes.
But it does. And as someone who's traveled the world, traveled the globe, preached the gospel.
Even as conservative as Tim and Kathy Keller were, they said, Dimas, you were demon possessed.
Yeah.
This was real. Thank God it's not everybody, but that really happened to me.
And for those who are listening, it's not like the devil can just come into your life. He can't do that. I mean, there has to be an invitation and a desire. And obviously you were a weak vessel with all of this sin and transgression and drugs.
I was a top candidate for demon. That Kathy Keller, who's my spiritual mother, she said, Dimas, you were a top candidate for demon possession, because I believe they were already in me. And I believe the gateway they came into my life was through horror movies. That's why I'm in the film industry. I was watching horror movie after horror. I'd be at home shaking, scared, watching all these demonic movies. Then from Galatians 5, the word sorcery is pharmakia. Okay. Then I'm smoking drugs, I'm handling drugs, I'm distributing drugs, smoking marijuana and all this stuff. I was opening myself up to all of this darkness. I know there's not a shadow of doubt in my mind. My boss was Satan at that time, because I was ruining people's lives.
Yeah, you were doing his will. Satan's will. You were doing what he wanted you to do. And the thief has come to steal, kill, and destroy.
That's right.
And there may be people watching right now who feel demonized. And we want them to know that they don't have to remain in bondage forever. Matter of fact, Jesus' first message from a synagogue in the region of Galilee, one of his first message was that he came to set the captives free.
Amen.
And that's not just get out of prison free card. That is get out of the prison that you're living in your soul. Get breaking free from that. So obviously, how did that happen for you? What happened?
The power of a praying mother. My mother felt that something was wrong with her child. She gathered the family together. She said, one or two things are going to happen. She said, either my son is going to change or he's about to die. She told my siblings, I can feel it. We're about to lose him. And my mother did the greatest thing that I want to tell every mother to do. She turned towards heaven in front of my family and said, Lord, I can't be his mother. I can't be his father. You're going to have to take him, Lord. You're going to have to be his mother. You're going to have to be his father. I'm giving my son to you. That's what she did. Next morning, I'm sitting on the porch. A meeting happened the night before with 3 women, ordinary women. One of them was like a kind of a minister who was like 80 years old, One of those old spiritual praying women. Yeah. These are 3 women in a housing projects. And they said, we're going to shut down the drugs in Winston-Salem. And they said, our top candidate is Daylight Supreme, which was me.
That's your name. That was my street name.
And they came to the area looking for me, crossed the street. Well, one of the ladies was my girlfriend's mother. The other lady lived next door, and the other one was like across the road. And they came, all 3 of them marched towards me with a plan. And they said, we need to pray for you. And I was like, huh? I said, They said, can we do that? I said, well, why not? Sure. I didn't think, like, what could these 3 ladies do? I'm already in the Dog Creek, I'm
but
down.
It's interesting. Most, let's call them sinners, right? Most people who are away from God are good with that. Now, had that been had you been a Christian, no, I'm good. Just sort of ducking away from prayer. But you were fine with that. I
was fine. I think I didn't think anything was going to happen,
and this is important.
I needed some comfort, So anybody that showed they cared was really good at that time. I just bit a man's face off. He was we were going to gun it out whenever I was going to see him. And I thought I killed him, but I found out, thank God he lived, because I was smashing his brains into the concrete. But he's okay. Never want to see him again, but he's okay.
Wow.
I had blood all over me. I was out of my mind. I needed help, and God sent help. And those women said, well, come into this house, like the movie War Room.
Yeah.
That was one woman. My story was 3. They took me into that room. They poured oil on their hands. This old school. They were passing around Crisco. It wasn't even like some holy olive oil.
Crisco.
And I remember I said, well, can I get some? They were like, no, you don't need some.
So Crisco, if anyone's listening, is that back in the day, that's basically corn oil that we all use.
Crisco's still around? I think
it's still around, but barely. We've moved on. We have other kinds of oil that we better. Olive oil, virgin olive oil, and
there you go.
Many good products. But anyway.
And the next thing she did is she said, in the name of Jesus. And when she touched my head, this woman was about 5'6".
This is the 80-year-old lady.
80-year-old lady. When they touched,
and she ain't messing around.
When she touched my head, my body was tossed to the floor. And I was shaking on the floor, spinning around like a snake. That's what they told me. Like I just was converging on the floor and twirling. And they were just, in the name of Jesus, they were praying and praying and praying and praying. All I know is this, Ron. My story started in the morning, and I came out of that room at night.
So this was a 12-hour at least.
They were, and just to show
they stayed
their
with
faith,
you the whole time.
Just to show their faith, they did not give up. It wasn't a quick fix. So it's not like today. Let's do this real fast. Hey, it's done. You're great. You're free. Go. No, they were like, we're going to stay here until this boy is complete. And I remember I felt something, which I know was demons, leave out of me. I mean, it was like a force. It was very violent. Like, boom. I mean, I felt something gone. And they knew it, and I knew it. I said, whoa. They were like, you're free.
That was it. That came after 12 hours of prayer?
12 hours of prayer.
And so they were watching you on the floor for 12 hours. They were probably singing, praying. I think it's important for people to know that some of the most respected ministers through the ages, whether it was John Calvin, Martin Luther, John Wesley, just going through the line. And
Jonathan Edwards.
And they all saw and experienced these things. And maybe that's not their personal story, but John Wesley would go out in his biographies.
He said they would go into fits and convulsions.
Right.
Yeah, and he
Same
would
thing.
See them freed. Yeah.
Same thing. You and I have seen that since.
I've seen that.
I've had
many a day.
I've had people, little girls not little girls, like young women speak to me with the voice of a fully engaged man with a bass or baritone voice.
Yeah.
With vibrato and everything.
Yeah.
And I've seen that. And it's a little bit, it's freaky.
It is freaky.
And it's bizarre because it's not the world we live in all the time. Now, for you and for some people who are watching, the foot is in the door. And my brother was a big athlete. He was a football player. He was a wrestler, baseball player, college, athlete, all that stuff. And whenever we would get in a fight, I was a lot smaller than him, much less muscular than him. But anytime we'd get in a fight, if we'd run down the hallway, and if I can shut the door then I can leverage my weight and he can't come in. But if his foot got in the door, he's coming in. So when people make room for the devil and his darkness and the drugs and the, pharmakia, these things that cause your mind to be, then you're open to that darkness. And when it comes in, it has to go out a different way.
Yeah.
And when those ladies prayed for you, and maybe you may not have ever known anyone like that who knows how to pray when it's not just praying for a good day, praying that you get a little extra job or whatever. I mean, I'm talking about praying the devil out. And that is something that Jesus gave the authority to his disciples, and he's still giving it today, where someone can show up at your home, knock on your door in your dorm room or your university or in your apartment complex or at your job or workplace. There are people who know how to tell the enemy to get out of your life. And when that happens, then you need to fill up your life with his goodness, God's goodness.
Oh, yeah. I got up off that floor, and I remember saying to them, I said, let me just talk to God by myself for a minute. And I went outside, and I said to God, I said, never again, God. I said, I'm never going to sell crack again. I said, I'm just going to sell weed because it's natural. That was my first prayer to God. I thought crack was evil, marijuana was okay. And then, I had a good youth pastor that walked me through everything, came to New York. I stopped selling the weed, came to New York, turned myself in. I was facing 7 years for that escape charge. And the judge did something that was profound. She said, why did you turn yourself in? I said, I'm turning myself in. I said, because I'm a follower of Jesus. And I said, whether I'm going to follow Jesus.
This is a New York City judge?
Right there, New York City, in her face. There were no black judges then, so it was a white lady judge. And I said, I'm going to follow Jesus, whether it means in jail or out of jail. Whatever's going to happen here, I'm going to follow Jesus. She threw me out the court. She said, take him to the cell. And then about 10 minutes later, she called me back, and she said, I'm going to do something I've never done before. I said, what? She said, I'm going to release you.
She's never done that.
Never done it. She pardoned me. She said, I'm going to release you. And I was like, she said, I'm going to tell you why. She said, I'm looking at all your mug shots, and you look so different from them. And she said, now I'm listening to you. She said, here's what I'm afraid of. If I send you to jail, you may become this person again. And I like what I'm seeing right now. So I'm not going to send you to jail. I'm going to release you and continue to do what you're doing, live your life. I was freed. I went to church. I served Jesus every day. I went back to school. I finally passed the GED, went into college. I became the top student in college, went to get my master's of divinity, and graduated with my master's degree, opened up a church, and pastored for 19 years in the worst projects, one of the worst projects in New York City, Bronx River, and not one homicide happened in Bronx River. God did a miraculous thing. I walked around, who's the biggest drug dealer? I walk up to him. This is my area. I'm your pastor.
You told him that?
Oh, I tell him straight to their face.
So you just used the same kind of...
the way I would take the blocks.
Right. You just did the same thing.
I did the same thing but with Jesus.
Right.
So I would, because to take a block, I would find out, yo, whose block is it? You. And I'll go up to him and be like, yo, what's up? You want to fight? You want to go to war? And we would fight or whatever would happen. And then that block would become mine, because I often had more drugs than they had too. So I was like, look, and then I would embrace him and he'd work for me now. And then I'm the boss. And then that's how you would expand it. It was the power. And look, I was a skinny guy. So it was, I think that demon that was in me had more authority than probably his demon. And, it's crazy how this system of Baal, Babylon and all that works. Same kind of paradigm. So I was taking territories and was growing. So when I became in Jesus, I did the same process. I said, look, I'm your pastor. Whatever happens, you get shot, you go to jail, whatever. If you are in this area, this 20 block area, I'm your pastor. And when they would go to
That's
jail.
That's how you led your church as well.
That's how I led my church.
And,
that's how I led
did you
people.
have people who were like you who also turned to God?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Turned
I
to God,
converted
turned to Christ.
the wildest killers, murderers, drug dealers to my church. This was a guy there, his name was Spider. He shot cops. He went to jail for 11 years for shooting police officers. They called him the Amazing Spider-Man. Everybody feared him. That was my right-hand man. That guy walked with me on the streets. Everybody like, yo, to this day, I go to Bronx River. They all like, whoa.
Do they still call him Spider?
Yeah, Spider. Yeah, Spider died with a smile on his face, riding on a bus to work. He just sat back, smiled, and I know he's in heaven. That dude completely converted, changed his life.
I mean, Dimas, but we want to take some time here in a minute and talk about what you're doing now as a movie producer, movie director, and what you're doing, making a massive impact in society and culture. Before we do, though, take a minute, talk to the audience about what they can do to be set free and have peace in their heart and life.
I would love to do that. Maybe you're like me, or maybe you're like me in a different way. Maybe darkness, you're attracted to darkness. Maybe you're like I was. I had to watch horror. I had to watch things of the dark. I was always involved in there was something driving me, and it was never driving me closer to God or the things of God. It was always driving me away from God or things away. There could be a possibility that you're being pulled by darkness. You're being pulled by the powers of Satan. And the way to be freed by that is to call on the name of Jesus. Some of my story, there were guys, I had hits on me. That means people were out to murder me. And that was one reason why I didn't want to become a Christian, because I was afraid that not carrying a gun and being as ruthless as I was, that I would be killed. God removed every last obstacle out of the way. And all the guns that I owned, I have no memory of where they went. So I say that to say that part of this is just trusting God and saying, God, here I am, broken. Here I am, lost. Here I am, not knowing you. And I don't know how any of this is going to work out, but I want to put my faith by inviting you into my life. And I said these words with a sincere heart. I said, Jesus, come into my life. Change me. Live inside of me. Tell me what to do. And if you make it clear that it's you speaking, I will do whatever you tell me to do. And I have lived the most exciting life. I've been over 30-something countries around the world. I have a big home. I have a lovely family. I have a gorgeous wife. I live in adventure every single day. I'm not living a boring faith life. I live an exciting Christian life full of joy. And I don't have to watch my back unless I'm in the same bad neighborhoods. But everywhere else, I'm good to go because I only do what's right now. And if you invite Jesus in, I'm telling you, he will do a work beyond what you could ever hope, dream, or imagine. And he has an excellent 100% victory track record of if you sincerely let him in and you sincerely follow him, he will show up and not let you down. And I hope the best for you. And that's all you got to do is pray, Father, Jesus, come into my life, rescue me, save me, be my guide, be my Lord, be my leader. I welcome you in. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. And he will give you the steps of what to do. Or I'm sure you can reach out to this great podcasts where they'll ask you, what are you thinking and what are you thinking about, and let God do the work. Yeah.
If you're viewing, you can see on the screen how you can reach out to us. And we want to help you to really know God. And there are people who are watching right now from many nations, Dimas, and you put it out there. And it's a lot of times in Western civilization, people don't hear how raw and how real this is. But people in many nations around the world, they've seen it with their own eyes.
Oh,
they've
yeah.
seen it in the marketplace and workplace.
I just came back from Morocco.
Yeah.
I was there for Ramadan. I respected what was going on. I fasted. I was fasting for Jesus, but I was fasting, walking around that country, and they were telling me there are spiritualists there too. This is everywhere.
Right.
And Jesus is everywhere, so call on him.
Jesus is alive. And this is the greatest news ever. And that's why they call it the gospel, which means good news. It's the greatest news that Jesus came. He was born in Bethlehem, where the prophet Micah said he would be born. The Messiah will come from Bethlehem. He'll be a ruler. Jesus was a ruler. He lived 33 years, lived the life that we could not live. And many people would think about you, oh, he's so bad. And I tell people who call themselves good, I said, well, who are you comparing? When you say good, who are you comparing yourself to? I mean, are you comparing yourself to all the bad people? Look, we all have fallen short of the glory of God. Every one of us have fallen short. We've sinned. We've committed a transgression. We know that we've fallen short. So even though your story is
I have an extreme story.
Extreme.
It's extreme.
This is definitely
so
an
So
extreme
if he could
story.
say me, man, you're good.
I mean,
you
really,
ain't do the stuff I did.
I have met some bad dudes, but this is really a first.
Yeah.
This story is amazing. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm really glad you're born again, because I wouldn't feel comfortable. Of course, through Jesus.
You do not want to meet the old me.
Right.
Thank God he's gone.
Right.
He's never coming back.
And it's amazing. We've known each other for a long time, but I've never heard the details of this story. Is this included in Street God?
Oh, yes. It's
Street God. You can find Street God, Dimas Salaberrios, on Amazon, or you can find
everywhere books are sold. Everywhere books are sold.
You went on TV. You went on.
This is it right here.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I'll let you have.
Let me ask you something. Is this your tattoo for real, or is that they just put that on?
I don't want to let down any listeners. I don't do tattoos, but
Okay.
It made an incredible cover.
Totally, I like
it's
this.
an award-winning cover with the tattoo.
So this book is, and I've never seen it in person here. So you've been withholding from me all these years, So, but thank you. But this then led to other things too. So you left the pastorate, not for any bad reason, just felt like God had used you in the Bronx. And
he called us out.
So New York City's in 5 different boroughs.
Yes.
And we're right here in Manhattan right now in Midtown. And then you were from Queens. That's another borough, Brooklyn, Staten Island, and then Bronx. Now Bronx is like it's like walking, for me, it's like going into a different nation.
It is.
And it is the ethnicities and the pluralism, if you will, the poverty that's there. And it's interesting because there are some parts of Bronx that are just like Manhattan. It's beautiful, it's nice, but it's an element of it. It's frozen in time and people can't get free. But you've helped them and you've showed us the way. And so when others get involved in the Bronx, they could make a difference. No place is out of reach because of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
He came, he lived that life, he died the death that we should have died, but he died in our place. And then 3 days later, after they nailed him to a tree and he became a curse, they buried him. And then 3 days later, he rose from the dead.
Amen.
And it doesn't have to be Easter Sunday to hear that story.
No, it does
because
not.
Jesus is alive. And you pray the prayer, people are praying with you. God can change lives. Then you go on to live this incredibly productive life, and you got involved in movie. We only have a few minutes here, but your first movie was Chicago.
No, my first movie was Emmanuel.
Emmanuel.
About the church shooting that happened in Charleston, South Carolina. And,
there were nine people, right?
Yeah,
AME.
the Manual 9, African Methodist Episcopal Church, Mother Emanuel, their flagship location in Charleston. A young man named Dylan Stormroof walked into the Bible study. They welcomed him, and he opened fire and killed 9. Let me tell you what was profound about that story. You can watch the film. It's called Emmanuel, the one.
How do we see that?
Amazon, all of
it's streaming.
outlets. Yeah. They can watch Emmanuel. And Steph Curry and Viola Davis were my partners in that movie.
Steph Curry, if anyone doesn't know who that is,
the greatest 3-point shooter that's ever walked the planet. And they told me they were martyred. They died worshiping God. And when the shooting took place, they told me it was zero chaos. Like, it wasn't scattered and tables flying and everything. And all of them died with smiles on their faces.
That is unheard of.
The survivors told me, they said a light entered the room, and they said it was zero chaos. And they all died with smiles on their faces. So God showed up in that situation. Great film to watch. The most Christian movie. Those families, majority of the families, forgave the killer and tried to win his soul to Jesus. He's on death row. He's going to die soon. Unfortunately, however you look at an eye for an eye situation. And my second film was Chicago, America's Hidden War, because more people are dying in Chicago during the same time as Afghanistan and Iraqi war. More people are dying in Chicago than the American casualties of those wars. So
we don't hear much about that.
And that's why I call it the Hidden War.
Yeah, wow.
So that we released it in theaters. Denzel Washington came on now as executive producer, and we're going to be releasing it as a 3-part series.
So that's coming out soon.
Yeah, so that'll be that's
so
coming out.
How did Denzel Washington, in case
we go to church together. Yeah, I go to the same church, and I met his wife. We became really good friends, and I was asked to film Denzel. I directed Denzel in a TV special. And I went over his house, and I was directing him and filming him. What an amazing man of faith. You were directing
Denzel.
I directed the greatest actor of all time.
Street God here. Daylight became actual daylight.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
We fasted and prayed together. He's a very Christ-focused man and a phenomenal artist.
One of the best in our lifetime, for sure.
No doubt.
Going back to the first movie where I saw him, Glory.
My God, that one tear.
That was it.
You want to hear the secret about that one tear?
Oh, please don't tell me it was fake.
No. So they said
that was the greatest, one of the greatest acting moments ever.
They said to him, we want you to cry. This is how committed he was committed to the craft. His wife was on set. He said, come here. And she was like, what? He said, I want you to slap me as hard as you can. And after that, he said to the director, you call action. That was like, this is different. He said, I know it is. Trust me. He said, all right, you ready, honey? She was like, I don't want you to slap me hard. And he said, now. She went, pow. He said, God said, action. He stood there, and for some of the sides, she smacked him. That was with that one tear dropped down.
That is crazy. Down. That is unbelievable.
That's commitment to work, man. I love that.
Amazing.
Now that's my love language.
Now,
deep commitment.
That is truly an insider. When that very moment he was acting out what the black people had to endure, they were not allowed to show emotion when they were being whipped.
Wow.
And he was quiet. That was the way it was.
Wow.
Or they would be beaten further or even killed. This is a movie that was.
I didn't even know that.
During the Civil War.
We're sharing some Deep South stuff.
Deep South stuff where you and I have spent a lot of time in the Deep South,
Yeah.
and there's been a lot of, it doesn't matter where you go, there's sin, there's problems, there's mistakes, there's evil, there's evil everywhere.
Yeah.
And this is our desire in this podcast, is to help people to think differently.
Wow.
And so what are you thinking is about change your thoughts, change your life. And you changed dramatically. Dimas, this is one of the great stories of New York. You have been a leader in this city. I have looked up to you. I have watched you. I've been amazed how you have juggled the politics, the divisiveness in our city. It's so divided, and it's divided all across America as well. But here we are in one of the most influential cities of the world that has all these problems, and yet there are true people who are going before God and wanting to be salt and light. Instead of part of the problem, they're part of the solution. And that's been you. You've been a healer. You've been a voice. You've been an influencer. You have not wasted your times in the political division.
No.
You have said, I'm just going to make a difference. So this movie, Chicago, will come out when? Do you any ideas?
Probably about 3 to 4 months from now. Okay. So I'd probably say definitely around September. You'll see a lot of advertisement for it. Some of those things get a little out of our control. I remember they told me, oh, we're going to release your movie in theaters in 2 months. That turned into 6 months, and then it came out. So I'll come if you want to welcome me back. I'd love to let your people know
definitely
around that time of the release. And also, we're releasing a movie called Camp Joy, which we just wrapped up in the summer with Viola Davis, Eric Roberts.
This is your movie.
Yeah, this is my movie.
Viola Davis.
Viola Davis. No, sorry. Did I say Viola Davis?
You did.
No.
She was.
That is the wrong name. Vivica Fox.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that. I produced with Viola Davis. I have not directed her yet.
Yeah, that's you go.
Coming.
That's right.
So this is Vivica
Very
Fox,
famous actress.
Eric Roberts, Princess Love, who's the younger generation know that, Sean Ringgold from and Dexter Darden from Maze Runner. These are a lot of youthful celebrities that a lot of the younger people than us know these people. And in a cast of 10 amazing kids. It's like Goonies meets 12 Angry Men that meets the movie Departed. So it has like a little mafia element to it. And it's an incredible movie. And a pastor pays a high price and dies so the kids could live in it. And it's off the chain. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this has been quite an eye-opening, compelling story. It is a true story. That is, I mean, you were a drug lord, a drug boss on the streets and changing lives for the worse. And now here you are, a humble servant of God who's changing lives in the thousands and thousands of people for the better. You've already touched New York City. Now you're through your film, your movies, you're touching the world, hanging out with all the great celebrities, some of my favorites. But man, I deeply admire and appreciate you, Dimas, and thank you. Thank you for being here. And thank you for watching today and being a part of this journey on What Are You Thinking? Remembering that your thoughts can be changed. You're never too late. It's called neuroplasticity. Your mind is able to be constructed and changed so that your thoughts will change, your life will change, and your behavior will change, and all the people around you can change with you. So God bless you. And thank you for being a part of this podcast. And we love you, man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
My dear brother.
You're the best,
You're the best too.
Thank you.
Thanks.